So when we got assigned to do a book report on any book we chose, I took days and days just trying to figure out the best book to do a report on because apparently my usual reading material of Diary of Wimpy Kid, Big Nate, or even Captain Underpants isn't up to standards to do a book report on. So I started my search for the best book I could use and actually like reading it, instead of getting a book that has some story that no one cares about. Then after an amount of time, I found it. The book.
Got him!
It had everything needed to be great. It had a complex character arc, life lessons, entertaining story. It was thrilling, scary, fun, saddening, exciting. I can't even believe I haven't thought of it sooner. Minecraft The Island by Max Brooks. It was perfect. Even Jack Black or
Jablinski
did an audio recording of him reading the book, which unfortunately I didn't know about until after reading the book. But anyway, a lot of stuff happens in this book, so let's get into it. So here it is, the whole story of Minecraft The Island, I guess. Awoke. No air. Drowning. Suffocating. Running out of oxygen. Dying. There's a light from above. Swimming towards it, the person gasps for air as they break the surface. Confused, they proceed towards the island, surprised to find that it's made of blocks. Upon swimming ashore, the person checks for any injuries, only to find that their hands and body are now shaped like squares and rectangles, and beginning to realize that this may be a dream. Shrugging off the thought of it for a bit, the person begins figuring out how this new world works in numerous ways. The person scours the land for food, managing to find a few apples. The person also runs into a cow, 2 sheep, and a chicken before nightfall. The person then sees what they recognize as a zombie. What? And attempts to hide underground. Upon doing so, the person begins to hallucinate the zombie saying, "This world is not a dream." So almost completely accepting what the zombie said, the person now has to figure out how to survive in this world. Eventually, daybreak arrives and the person... You know what? From now on, we're calling the person Steve, okay? It just makes more sense. Steve leaves from the underground hideaway to find the zombie has died and left behind rotten flesh. Steve then makes the word help out of dirt blocks and begins to learn crafting, making items such as a button, a chest, a few bowls, and a boat. Thinking he can find his way home with the boat, he immediately begins sailing away from the patch of land, but then realizes that the decision to do so was a mistake as he had no plan or navigation equipment, and eventually makes it back to the island. Upon arriving back at the island, Steve makes a house out of dirt and wood, and proceeds to make numerous tools such as a shovel, an axe, a hoe, and 2 pickaxes. Daybreak arrives once more, and Steve begins making a wheat farm, while managing to curb starvation by eating an apple and raw chicken. By nightfall, Steve ends up making a furnace, using it to make cooked chicken. Throughout the night, Steve understands how furnaces work in this world, and learns how to make glass. Steve begins wondering about what could be built with this new material until a spider interrupts. A fight ensues and the spider eventually dies, and Steve begins having a craving for warmth. Steve begins throwing away wooden planks and tools into the furnace before he discovers coal, and understands how torches work. By daybreak, Steve comes across another spider and panics. Injuring his leg in the process, Steve soon realizes that spiders aren't hostile in the daytime, but decides to head to shore anyway out of an abundance of caution. Upon looking back at the island, the spider and Steve lock eyes for a few seconds before the spider suddenly disappears. Heading back to the house, Steve has a discussion with a cow regarding how this world works. I just don't understand why some things should clearly work and they don't, and vice versa. Ooh. You know what? You're right. I shouldn't assume anything. Nightfall hits. Suddenly, numerous spiders, skeletons, zombies, and creepers go after Steve, who has no choice but to retreat to shelter. By daybreak, Steve begins mining, running into some gravel on the way down, and finds coal and iron ore. Steve decides to check on the wheat farm and finally realizes that plants actually need water to grow. Steve then shears wool from a sheep and crafts a bed, finally being able to sleep through the night. Steve's sleep is interrupted by a zombie banging on his door. The zombie dies at daybreak. Seeing this, Steve then realizes that every single monster dies when the sun comes out. Steve then successfully crafts a fishing rod and begins fishing. By nightfall, Steve ends up having a nightmare about creepers and realizes that if he got enough torches, then no hostile mobs will spawn on the surface because they can't spawn in light. After a few days of mining, Steve discovers gunpowder, lapis lazuli, and how shields work. Steve then begins going after some hostile mobs with his newfound shield and discovers lava. A zombie pushes Steve in, and Steve barely survives with his life. Steve later sees a humanoid outline that he runs up to and discovers for it to be an evil witch. The witch throws poison at him, and Steve charges the witch with his iron sword and kills the witch. Steve gets hurt by the poison, but he ends up surviving. Steve then decides to make a home up on a hill, with construction taking about 4 weeks to finish. Steve built an entryway over the former help sign and made it several stories tall, complete with a wraparound kitchen, a grand bedroom, a workshop, a hot tub, and a chicken coop. The home went up as high as the clouds. While walking into his new home, Steve hears a slight a creeper had blown up. The house is engulfed in flames, and the lava from under his hot tub gets released, and the lava is slowly making its way over to his best friend, the cow. And he's yelling at the cow to run away, but the cow gives no response. The cow keeps walking closer and closer to the lava, like it can't even notice that it's there, which Steve determines is some cruel, sick joke that this world has. Steve then rushes over to his water supply he has stored and was barely able to quench out all the lava and save his beastie friend. Though his house is now destroyed, but Steve vows to recover from this experience. With no food or weapons, Steve goes back to square one and does various tasks, like fishing, mining, and crafting. Steve later finds a book titled Navigation, with info on how to create maps, signs, a book and quill, and a compass. Steve decides to pack for a long voyage and leaves a note at the house for any visitor that comes to the island, along with a list of things that Steve has learned, and says goodbye to his best friend the cow, and sails off in the ocean. And that is the end of Minecraft The Island. At the end there, it seems like that will be the last time we ever get to hear about Steve. Wait, what? There's a sequel? Well, I know what my next book report's going to be on.